So let's have some fun. It's been a long week, 2 weeks. I haven't been able to get into the wood shop. So I just want to have some fun today. I want to make a box that would make a great Christmas gift. They're fairly easy to make. This is an example of an earlier one. I've actually refined. This is a version, with screws and plugs. It is, again, fairly simple to make, but I think very high quality. For today, I use this cherry that I got out of my wood stack and these ebony plugs. I just love ebony and cherry. I guess that's my most current obsession. But you can make it all kinds of ways. You can go to Home Depot or Lowe's and just buy oak if you want to make one of these out of oak. A big box store, it's already going to be milled and ready to go. So that's going to make things easier for you. But again, I just love this cherry. Then mill it down to exactly 3/4 of an inch. And then we can move on with the build. I have plans. I've spent time designing even something as silly as a box because I'm just an obsessive design geek. It helps me in the wood shop to make things efficiently, which I enjoy. I don't have a joiner to get this edge perfectly straight, and it doesn't fit up against the fence perfectly straight. It wobbles a little bit. So I am going to use some double-sided tape. And I'm going to attach this straight edge to the edge. So then I'll know that this is straight, and I can turn around and get the other side straight. That was kind of a lot of work just to get one board. But it's really beautiful. I don't know if you can see on camera, but it's really beautiful. And again, you wouldn't have to do that if you just buy pre-milled lumber. Okay, now I'm going to cut these to length. If you're wondering what this is, we're building a building back here. I've taken the deck off the wood shop, so this is to keep me from falling out of the wood shop. I'm going to cut this in to make sure it's square. I've measured this to the dimension of the top. My parts in this direction. Now I'm going to rip them to the correct dimension this way. I still have the high tooth count cross-cut blade on here because it gives me a real clean cut. One thing I've done in the past that is a mistake is rely on the table saw measurements, but because this is thin kerf, these measurements are a little bit off. This isn't a full 1/8 of an inch, so it makes this distance a little bit different. So, just check it. I marked the front. The front gets 2 dados that are 3/4 of an inch by 1/4 of an inch. I've run 1 test piece. The measurements are correct. By the way, if you're interested in drawings, comment. I'll do these step by step so it's easier for people to understand and build this themselves. The dado is not absolutely necessary. You could do this without it. I just like the way things fit together in a dado. The sides get 1 dado. I forgot to do the dado on the top of the sides, so it's really important when you have a setup to make sure you've done all the cuts you need with that setup before moving on to something else. I've clamped the parts together, and I'll be working from this from now on to check the fit of the top and ultimately the bottom, which will get rabbets all the way around and fit into a slot. So everything's looking good. I know this is square. Everything looks good. I have all my parts. I've set up the dado blade to give me a 1/4 inch slot, a 1/4 inch from the bottom of the piece. One of the things I do most often is, let's say, put the groove on the wrong side and then realize it doesn't just mirror. So I've marked where all these grooves need to go. So the bottom needs a dado, I guess you call it. I always get those confused. There needs to be a 1/2 inch tall and a 1/4 inch wide. So I will be using the sacrificial fence. I adjusted this cut to be 1/4 inch in and a 1/2 inch high so that it fits in here. It can be loose, the bottom can be loose, it should be so that it can move. Now I will cut it all the way around the bottom. Well, the mock-up is successful. Everything fits. The bottom is in place in the grooves. I'm not particularly happy with this gap. Probably shouldn't have cut this width until I was sure. But what we can do now is to take a tiny bit off of these ends. I may have to take a tiny bit out of the bottom to just kind of squeeze everything up so I get a fairly tight joint at the top. Isn't it funny with all these fancy measurements and computer drawings, you make the last little adjustments more or less by eye. So the center line for the hinge pin is 3/8 by 3/8, so I know that a 45-degree angle will set it in the right spot. So this doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but I'm using this square just to make sure that I'm drilling the hole fairly vertically. So these are just 1/4-inch oak dowels, and they're a little tighter than I would really like them to be. I don't want to force them and break the wood. Just going to sand them a little bit. And actually, I'm not even going to put glue in that, because when it's together, there are nowhere for these guys to go. Obviously, they're very long. I'll be cutting them to length as I fit the box together. Okay, so I am marking the approximate depth of the pinhole. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, this stuff really can't go anywhere. And I'll just cut it off there. That's pretty good. So I'm going to cut the 45-degree chamfer that will allow this to open in this direction and create a finger hold in this direction. I want this to be about 3/8, but I'm just going to sneak up on it because I want to make sure that I leave enough wood. That's working pretty good. When I sand this, I'll take a little bit more off of this just so it will open slightly more than vertical. But everything seems to be working fairly well. Isn't it interesting how complicated making something simple seems to be? Okay, so I've carefully marked where I want all the 3/8 inch holes for the plugs. They won't go all the way through, so the screws can hold everything together. It will be glued, so the screws actually sort of just function as clamps until the glue takes hold. So one of the last steps is to take this 45 chamfer off of this guy, and I'm gonna just use the disc sander. So what I really like about assembling with screws, and I have just these small drywall screws, they basically just need to hold it together while the glue dries, and ultimately you know, we're making a box, not a bridge. So how strong does it really have to be? But I like this process because you can take it slow and easy, one step at a time. I pre-drill for the screws, try to make sure I don't split out the wood. Another thing that is really good about screws is when you screw up, you can unscrew them. It's amazing how strong glue is in that short amount of time. Screwed up again. I think putting the ebony plugs in is one of the best parts. Cutting the plugs flush is also a lot of fun. Okay, it may not seem really simple, but I did a lot of extra stuff and I think it's cool. I mean, I think this is pretty good for half a day's work. It's getting dark, as you can tell. Just have to put a finish on it and I'm done. And if you batch these, you can make a lot of them. There are lots of simpler ways. You don't have to do the plugs. You could just glue it together. You actually don't even have to do the dados. You could just do solid boards. So there are lots of ways to make this simpler based on your skills, but I still think it's worthwhile. Wouldn't it be nice to get something like this as a gift? Let's get a finish on it and then have a beer. Maybe it's just me, but I just think cherry with ebony accents is just cool. You can disagree if you like. It's okay to have the wrong opinion. The nice thing about making the bottom this way is it lifts the box up off so there's a shadow line, which I think is really nice. You can make it. Trust me, it's not that hard. Isn't that detail right there very cool? I'll let this soak in probably about 10 more minutes, wipe it off, and it's beer time.